Tonight, as the jury deliberates Jacob Hoggard's fate, a CBC exclusive interview with a third alleged victim.
I was in a lot of pain and I was crying.
What she says the Hedley frontman did and the new charge he's facing. A first in Canada, why possession of small amounts of some drugs will be decriminalized in BC.
Substance use is a public health issue, not a criminal one.
And Rosemary Barton sits down with former Trump advisor Kellyanne Conway.
Why did you use those terms in that interview?
So alternative facts was literally a gaffe.
More on alternative facts, that 2016 campaign, and whether Trump will run again. This is The National. Good evening, I'm Andrew Chang. Adrienne is away. Jacob Hoggard, once the frontman of the rock band Hedley, is now facing another allegation of rape in a separate case in Kirkland Lake, Ontario. A fact we can report because a jury in Toronto is now weighing a verdict on charges related to two other alleged sexual assaults. In that trial, Hoggard is accused of groping a 15-year-old fan and after she turned 16, of raping her. He's also accused in a separate incident of raping an adult woman from Ottawa. And now another charge of sexual assault involving someone who was 19 years old at the time. These allegations, all graphic, disturbing, and denied by Hoggard. But his third accuser is speaking for the first time exclusively to CBC News' Judy Trinh. Her identity is protected by a court order and her voice has been altered.
She was a 19-year-old Hedley fan who went to the band's concert during Kirkland Lake's homecoming week. She just wanted to talk music and jam with the lead singer. Instead, she says Jacob Hoggard forced himself on her. Her identity is protected by a court order.
I kept telling him, no, don't stop, over and over and over again.
Hoggard's lawyer says the singer is innocent and denies this allegation.
Would you like to sing with me?
In June 2016, following the concert, the young woman and other fans partied with the band around a fire pit near their hotel. She got drunk. That's when she says Hoggard brought her to his room.
He tried to remove my clothes and I told him no, and he did it anyways.
She says Hoggard took a naked photo of her without consent, then raped her.
He called me a dirty little piggy. I was in a lot of pain and I was crying.
And he didn't seem to notice the pain or the crying when he did that.
He completely ignored it.
She says Hoggard choked and slapped her, leaving a red handprint on her thigh that lasted a week.
I felt powerless. I couldn't run away. I couldn't go anywhere. I was stuck there with him.
The woman lives in British Columbia. For 6 years, she kept the incident a secret, but is now pressing forward with a charge.
I just want to tell my story, and I hope justice will be served.
Okay, so Judy, we're hearing about all this now, but Hoggard's latest accuser came forward to police some time ago.
That's right, Andrew. The woman reported it to police in February. Now, after investigating those allegations in Kirkland Lake, Ontario Provincial Police charged Hoggard with sexual assault causing bodily harm. His next court appearance is on August 4th. Hoggard's lawyer says he plans to vigorously defend himself and intends on pleading not guilty to this latest allegation. Andrew.
Judy Trinh, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
In Alberta, a father and son have been found guilty in the shooting deaths of two Métis hunters in 2020. Paige Parsons joins us now from Edmonton. And Paige, the jury came back after just starting deliberations yesterday.
That's right, Andrew. They found Anthony Bilodeau guilty of second-degree murder in the death of Jake Sansom and guilty of manslaughter in the death of Maurice Cardinal. They found Anthony's father, Roger Bilodeau, guilty of 2 counts of manslaughter as well. And the road to the trial, and even the trial itself, was a difficult one for the men's family.
Nothing will ever be justice. I mean, you know, how do you put a time or sentence on 2 lives, and lives that were as significant as their lives?
It was a case that rocked a small rural community. On March 27, 2020, Jake Sansom and his uncle Maurice Cardinal were hunting near the village of Glendon, just over 200 kilometers northeast of Edmonton. That night, both men were shot to death during a confrontation with two farmers in the area. During a 2-week Court of Queen's Bench trial in Edmonton, jurors heard evidence that one of the two accused, 58-year-old Roger Bilodeau, spotted the hunter's truck in his driveway. Believing they were thieves, the farmer and his then 16-year-old son chased them, reaching speeds of over 150 kilometers per hour. Bilodeau called his older son Anthony, in his 30s, to help. He brought a gun. Security footage caught the encounter on camera. When the two trucks came to a stop near a remote intersection, according to the defense, Sansom broke Roger Bilodeau's truck window. When his son Anthony arrived, he shot and killed Sansom, then Cardinal. Crown prosecutors argued both Bilodeau men should be convicted of second-degree murder for the killings and lying to police before finally confessing.
I just said, Anthony, I said, they know my truck, and I said, we've got to fess up on this.
What did he say?
He said, yeah, his dad, I know. I said, let's deal with it.
Anthony Bilodeau's lawyer argued his client acted in self-defense, and Roger Bilodeau's lawyer tried to persuade the jury that the father didn't intend for the encounter to turn fatal. Leaving the courthouse, Anthony Bilodeau's lawyer told reporters he does believe there are grounds for appeal. The men's families are still trying to absorb the verdicts, but they are thankful for all the support they received, including from Colton Boushie's mother, who came to Edmonton today to be with them. Now they say it's time to try to start to heal. Andrew.
Okay, clearly a difficult case. Paige Parsons in Edmonton, thanks so much. Well, now to British Columbia, where the federal government made a major move today to help tackle the opioid crisis. In a first in Canada, it has approved a request to decriminalize small amounts of some illegal drugs for people 18 and up in British Columbia. Renee Filipponi takes us through how it will work and how the community is reacting.
I couldn't, of course, talk about her, without crying.
It's been 6 years now since Deb Bailey's daughter, Ola, died of an overdose. Her body was found in a Vancouver stairwell.
And she started to use heroin, and that was really it for her.
21-year-old Ola struggled with addiction for years. Bailey says the shame made it more dangerous. And the move to decriminalize small-scale possession is just a first step in the right direction.
You're using and you can hold a certain amount, and we move towards stopping shaming people for becoming addicted. That could be huge.
Today, the federal government approved BC's request for an exemption from the law criminalizing drug possession.
This time-limited exemption is the first of its kind in Canada, and with it comes great responsibility.
The 3-year trial starts in January. It will allow adults to carry up to 2.5 grams of drugs like illicit fentanyl, heroin, and cocaine.
It reflects our government's agreement that substance use is a public health issue, not a criminal one.
It's a move police in the province support, but say there are concerns that need to be addressed before it's implemented.
I have some concerns around public consumption, expanded online illicit sales of illicit drugs, motor vehicle related offenses of people using drugs in vehicles, impacts to youth and children.
But advocates say these changes need to happen right now.
They talk about urgency, and yet it's 7 months down the road. That's another 1,300 people. Are you kidding me?
There are also concerns this does nothing to address safe supply or access to treatment. And politicians need to listen to people on the front lines.
The government should put more trust in us to come up with more solutions.
All in the battle against a crisis, killing on average 6 people a day in BC. Renee Filipponi, CBC News, Vancouver.
Well, Canada's Auditor General released a series of reports today on a number of different topics, and the message was blunt on several fronts. Despite promises made to disabled veterans, despite calls to curb discrimination in Canada's prisons, the federal government is failing to deliver. And as Ashley Burke explains, the human cost is very real.
After 2 years on the job, the Auditor General says she's feeling more disappointed than hopeful.
The results have not gotten any better. In fact, in some cases, they have gotten worse.
Karen Hogan released a series of reports into issues her office already audited in the past, affecting vulnerable people.
It's very frustrating and discouraging for the government to know for many years that problems exist, that barriers exist, but that little action is taken.
One report found that Black and Indigenous offenders are twice as likely to be placed in maximum security institutions and remain in custody longer.
We found not only systemic barriers, but also, in my view, systemic racism in certain instances.
I saw racism all the time in correctional services, yeah.
Aisha Bensley-Mann served 3.5 years in a medium security facility.
I never thought I'm gonna have the opportunity to get parole. I never even applied for it because I'm just wary of them because they treated me badly since the first day I came.
Another report found injured veterans are still waiting far too long for their disability applications to be processed, 10 months when the target is 3. The report also said veterans who are francophones and women face even longer delays.
Which is unacceptable. This has a real consequence on the well-being of our veterans and their families.
The report is a snapshot of a point in time, and we've made some real tangible progress since the audit period ended.
The government presented a united front, accepting all the recommendations in principle, then defending their efforts.
We have every expectation that we will continue to accelerate in rooting out racism in all of its forms.
But the Auditor General says it's time for the government's actions to live up to its words. Ashley Burke, CBC News, Ottawa.
1 week after the mass shooting at an elementary school in Uvalde, Texas, the first funerals took place today for some of the 21 victims. Just a few minutes' drive from where the attack took place, the body of 10-year-old Amerie Jo Garza arrived at a church today for her funeral service. She was among 19 students and 2 teachers killed by a gunman inside their 4th grade classroom. More funerals are scheduled for later this week. Well, Canada is imposing another round of sanctions on key Russian financial institutions and citizens, including a woman purported to be Vladimir Putin's girlfriend.
So we're targeting banks. We're targeting also oligarchs close to the Putin regime, and we're also targeting a person very close to Putin.
A former gymnast, now in Russian media, Alina Kabeva, is one of 22 Russians sanctioned today. 4 banks were also targeted, and the government suggested there could be more sanctions to come. Now, as for the war itself, intense fighting continues as Russian forces try to consolidate recent gains in the east, but they're also making moves in the south. Tensions are high in Mykolaiv. Taking it could open the door to Odessa, putting the entire south in peril. Margaret Evans is in Mykolaiv tonight, where those who haven't fled are digging in, determined to resist.
The rhythm of daily life in Mykolaiv becomes more elemental day by day. Here, residents lining up to fill their containers from a well, water treatment facilities damaged by fighting. There's no water in the tap, says Marina, and our government supplies clean water like this. We're patient. They have to be. The city has stood now for 3 months as a barrier between Russian troops occupying territory just to the east and the city of Odessa to the west. It comes with a cost. Andre lost his house to one of the latest rounds of shelling in May, a missile landing outside and setting it alight. Amazingly, he says, everyone survived, even the smallest. Shelling intensified again this week. In the city's hospitals, now way stations for injured soldiers and civilians, doctors often live on the premises, including Ihor Skoropad.
If we don't have such friends like Canada, Great Britain and United States, it will be very hard to stay in this state that we right now.
Irina Perepelizina has been here since early March, shrapnel ripping through her body when a Russian artillery shell hit her outside a supermarket. The streets here have a hollowed-out feel to them, like a ghost town. But there are pockets of life too, some people even returning from abroad. Vitaly Kim, a local hero along with being head of the regional administration, says it's not a good idea yet.
My advice is not to come back till 2 or 3 weeks to see what will be on the front line.
People here insist they'll take occupied territory back. Colonel Roman Kostenko is a Ukrainian MP when he's not at war. Now he heads a special forces unit. The biggest challenge, he says, is to hold Mykolaiv while we prepare reserves for the offensive and the liberation of territory. For the people who've decided to stay in the city, the challenge is to hold their nerve. Margaret Evans, CBC News, Mykolaiv.
COVID measures will remain in place at the border for at least another month. The extension comes a day after Parliament voted down a Conservative motion to revert to pre-pandemic rules for travel. Several measures are still in place at airports and land borders, including vaccine mandates and random testing. Well, in Britain, final preparations are underway for the Queen's Platinum Jubilee celebrations this week. British flags are out in full force along London's famous Regent Street, while outside Buckingham Palace, soldiers have been rehearsing for the Queen's birthday parade. And not far away, die-hard fans are already staking out a spot, setting up tents to try and catch a glimpse of the royal family. Now, as excitement builds for the Queen's Platinum Jubilee, Chris Brown shows us what it means for the British economy.
As the head of the British state and arguably the most famous woman in the world, the Queen wields serious economic clout, especially in her Jubilee year.
I would say at this time of the year, by about 30% increase in our production. The Jubilee has definitely given us a bit of a kickstart. How many of these have you got to print in this?
Stuart Morris is rolling hundreds of thousands of souvenir tea towels off his printing machines. This single order from the Daily Mail newspaper for its readers is worth £80,000.
We've done the tote bags, shopping bags, we've done aprons, but it seems to get bigger every 10 years, so let's hope there'll be another one.
On souvenir sales alone, the Jubilee generates some impressive numbers. Along with all the tea towels, people are expected to snap up some 6 million coffee mugs, more than 10 million British flags, and up to 3 million items of stationery and pens. Add it all up, and branding experts estimate the Jubilee amounts to a $1.6 billion Canadian infusion into the British economy.
The largest part of that will be from benefits to tourism, and so we estimate about 1% of British tourism spend is connected to the monarchy.
Josem says the Queen and her family cost British taxpayers too, roughly $800 million Canadian a year for all of their residences and security. And shutting down the country for 2 stat holidays to celebrate is also costly. So for some, it's not a clear-cut win.
It's definitely ridiculous. There should be other avenues where that money could be better channeled.
Still, merchandising sales alone will make the Jubilee profitable. And while the Queen is, of course, the star, for this company, her pets come a close second. This corgi tea towel is actually their best seller. Chris Brown, CBC News, Hadley.
Now, on top of the official Platinum Jubilee celebrations, there are thousands of street parties being organized across Britain. Adrienne stopped by one of them to see how people are marking the historic moment.
Okay, there's nothing like starting a party early. The official 4-day Jubilee weekend does not begin until Thursday, but the good folks at Brisbane Road, right at Quebec Road, see the Commonwealth connection there, aren't waiting.
Okay, we're about to cut the cake!
Consider this moment just an appetizer for the ubiquitous and huge British street parties to come. So some 16,000 applications for those parties, double from a decade ago, have been submitted. That was double from the Golden Jubilee in 2002. The Brits are in a mood for togetherness. And of course they are. COVID crushed years of togetherness. And in this country, tracking to have the worst inflation of all G7 nations, a little homemade fun is affordable. And then there is Her Majesty. Of the roughly 50 monarchs in British history, she's the only one to make it to 70 years on the throne. No one alive today is likely to ever see that again. It may never happen again. So even as all the Commonwealth countries reevaluate their relationship with the monarchy, How do you say thank you for all that service?
You know, the last few years have been challenging, and I think it's something that people can really genuinely rejoice and be happy about.
I think just being there and supporting her on the day is all we can do.
That's what this week is about. Thursday, watch for a birthday parade down the Mall. Later in the evening, a 70-aircraft flyover as the so-called working royals join the Queen on the balcony. Friday, it's the service of remembrance. Yes, Prince Harry and Meghan will be there. Saturday, a party at the Palace. Sunday, that giant Jubilee lunch across the entire country. There's more, there's always more of the moments you'd expect and the ones no one sees coming, and we'll be there with you for all of it.
Packed schedule. So Adrienne will be co-hosting the National from London starting tomorrow, bringing special coverage of the Queen's Platinum Jubilee, including an exclusive look inside Windsor Castle.
Then there is the Royal Library. This is the place we were really eager to see because this is the place that houses some of the most precious items in the royal collection.
Okay, so here are the details. Adrienne will also be hosting a CBC News special on Thursday for the Queen's birthday parade, kicking off the official celebrations. It all starts 5 a.m. Eastern on CBC News Network and on CBC Gem. Well, an Ontario community is trying to right a historic wrong surrounding the graves of some who came to Canada to escape slavery.
I'm going to mark the grave around the flag.
Up next, honoring the stories of those lost to history. Plus, she was at the center of the Trump White House, and she's still defending the former president.
You had a boss who liked to play pretty fast and loose with the truth, to say the very least.
Coming up, Rosemary takes on alternative facts and more in her interview with Kellyanne Conway. Plus, a little later.
Slow and steady.
When this Halifax woman decided to lace up again, she didn't realize she'd be going back in time.
They do look like the ones I used to have.
Why her vintage roller skates were an unusually perfect fit. We're back in 2.
CBC News, The National, named Canada's best national newscast at the Canadian Screen Awards.
At least 106 people have died in Brazil from flooding over the weekend that triggered several landslides in the country's northeast. Local authorities say several people are still missing and about 5,000 people have been forced to flee their homes. Canadian oil giants Cenovus and Suncor announced today plans to restart work on the expansion of the White Rose oil field in Newfoundland. It's a $3 billion project that was put on hold when oil prices collapsed in 2020. The project is expected to create nearly 2,000 jobs. Well, a final resting place is being given new life. It contains the bodies of those who escaped slavery through the Underground Railroad, as well as Black loyalists who helped Canada during the War of 1812. Katie Nicholson shows us the efforts to identify and remember those buried there.
Under a punishing sun, the hard work of reclaiming the past.
I'm going to mark the grave around the flag.
James Russell got sick of driving by this empty field, knowing it was the former grounds of a church. And so many early Black settlers were buried here, their headstones lost to time.
I think I was a little pissed off.
It cost him $3,000 of his own money and countless hours, all worth it.
This is a sacred ground. People are buried here. People who lived and loved and had relatives and had happy, sad lives. But they are people, and that they have names and they have faces. That's the sidewalk.
Ground-penetrating radar showed the 75-year-old where the graves and long toppled headstones may be.
The graves are marked in yellow, and the red dots are buried headstones. So there's 28 in total.
He hopes those headstones will be excavated, maybe even restored, to provide clues to who was laid to rest here.
So this one right here is the first one that you've marked out?
Yes. And it's always east to west, because Christians buried the folks east to west.
Mary York, September 15th, 1849.
The church is long gone, but some records remain at the museum.
We have about 15 names for sure that are, we think that they are buried there.
Including 2 Black men who died trying to keep an escapee from being returned into slavery.
Those 2 individuals are local heroes that, with this project, we hope we'll be able to recognize them a bit better in a site like that at the graveyard.
For Russell, it's more than just finding a way to honor Black history.
When all this is done, how will you feel?
Great. Yeah.
Why?
I've done my part in terms of respecting folks who have been denied respect. And that means a lot to me.
Katie Nicholson, CBC News, Niagara-on-the-Lake.
Well, she was a central figure in the Trump presidency and coined an expression that persists to this day.
Sean Spicer, our press secretary, gave alternative facts to that. But the point remains.
Wait a minute, alternative facts?
Coming up, Rosie interviews Kellyanne Conway. Plus, what's spoiling summer plans for some tour operators who were hoping for a post-pandemic comeback? Welcome back. A year and a half after losing to Joe Biden, Donald Trump still casts a long shadow over U.S. politics. While only he knows for sure if he'll run again, few know him better than Kellyanne Conway.
Do you believe that Donald Trump will run again in 2024? And if he asked you to run his campaign, would you?
Yes, and I think that he would like to run in 2024 because he thinks there's unfinished business. He sees that Biden is not doing a great job.
As senior counselor to the president, Conway was closer to Trump than just about anyone outside the Trump family. Fiercely loyal, she defended his angry outbursts and his bouts of misinformation. She also drew heavy criticism of her own on that score before leaving the administration in August 2020. It was quite the tightrope that Kellyanne Conway walked for years. Not just a Trump loyalist, but also married to one of his fiercest critics. It's something she revisits in her new memoir, Here's the Deal. And tonight, in a Canadian exclusive, our chief political correspondent, Rosemary Barton, speaks with Conway about the Trump years, about alternative facts, and about the prospect of a Trump 2024 presidential ticket.
Kellyanne Conway, thank you for making the time. Appreciate it. Did you write this book because you were trying to correct the record about yourself or the president's record? What was the goal here?
The goal of my memoir is really to tell the story behind the stories. Many people are very interested to know from where I've come, what motivates me, how I became the first woman in United States history to successfully manage a presidential campaign, why Donald Trump chose me, what I did as senior counselor to the president, and really how I feel about the tweeting men in my life, a boss and a husband who were constantly on Twitter communicating when I was not. And I was talked about and spoken for and spoke on behalf of the country so many times, and yet I didn't tell my story because I felt I was a public servant on the taxpayer dollar. And for me, people think they know me and people think it's fun and it's for kicks and clicks to make fun of me, make fun of my hair, my looks, talk about my family and the like. But there's a whole other half of the country that feels a different way about me. But I also think that President Trump, over time, history will show that he deserves a ton of credit for getting a great number of accomplishments completed on behalf of the American people, not least of which are trade deals, including with Canada and Mexico, Korea, Japan, and even China.
Well, you touched on a lot of things that I want to ask about, so that was a good start. One of them, and I bring this up because I think it's one of the things that Canadians would remember about you, is that the quip about alternative facts.
Sean Spicer, our press secretary, gave alternative facts to that. But the point remains.
Wait a minute. Alternative facts? Of course, you said that when you were trying to explain Sean Spicer's false claims about the crowd size at the inauguration. Why did you use those terms in that interview?
So alternative facts was literally a gaffe. I melded together things I was trying to say, not to explain or defend what Sean Spicer had said, because I had just spent 38 minutes giving 3 Sunday Show Network interviews, CBS, ABC, and NBC, looking into a blank camera in the freezing cold outside the White House as the very first person in the Trump administration to do so. And I had no notes, no net, no staff, nothing. And that's okay. I'm used to doing that. The anchors who are watching me have a lot of people around them, people in their ear, the teleprompters, the notes, and the whole bunch. But alternative facts was a gaffe. That was never meant to. It was a misstatement that I corrected immediately and many times since. The reason people keep alternative facts alive is because I've spoken millions of words and they don't have much else to go on, frankly. They need to do that to try to diminish me, to try to try to get the president to be mad at me and fire me and people to pretend that we're just a bunch of liars. So I would never lie to the public through alternative facts.
I would say, Ms. Conway, yes, you say it's a slip of the tongue, and sorry to interrupt you, but it was a pattern with the president to misrepresent facts. He did that hundreds and hundreds of times, and it's documented. And I wonder if it became a thing because you had a boss who liked to play pretty fast and loose with the truth, to say the very least.
I believe people kept alternative facts alive because the mainstream media that could not get enough of me during the campaign. I was on TV 7-8 times a day. So I have a living, breathing video catalog of what I thought about each state, our campaign strategy, the fact that Trump was going to win. I said it many times on the record. These other people did not pretend they did because they can't do what I did, frankly. Donald Trump wins, and that was not part of the implicit bargain. The implicit bargain was, oh, here comes Kellyanne as a campaign manager in the last few months. So now we have a fair fight. We can have her on to explain things. He said, we have Chick-fil-A and Big Macs piled to the ceiling. And somebody said, they're not piled to the ceiling. They're only this high.
Yes, I understand that, but you represented the president and the administration, and he certainly made a lot more false claims than about hamburgers. But let me go back to something that you do say in the book, that you were the first person in his inner circle to tell him he didn't win in 2020. The president has actually since responded to that and said that that is not true, that you were not, and that he would never have accepted that claim. So why do you think he chose to respond like that to what you've said in the book? And what does that say about what he thinks of you?
Well, I know what he thinks of me, and I know what great work we've done together, and nobody can change that. I had in my email the night before a statement he was going to put out, which was very highly complimentary of me, the book, the work we've done together, and quote, maybe we'll need to do it again. So obviously someone got in his ear overnight and he made a different call, but that doesn't wash away the years of great work.
You write a lot about, and you mentioned it off the top, the strain the strain in your marriage, that the president and your husband, these counter tweetings. And I'm only asking, obviously, because this is in the book. This isn't me digging into your personal life without you having written about it. Your husband, time and again, tells the world that you're working for a madman. At one point, he says you've ruined yourself and embarrassed the family. Really painful things, I would imagine.
My husband's opinion of the president affected me greatly. He was crying on election night in his black MAGA hat. He was all for Donald Trump and Mike Pence winning. He would come to the campaign night after he was finished with his own job to help out. And as I write in the book, people say without Kellyanne Conway, Donald Trump would not have been elected in 2016. That's debatable, but what will never be in doubt, without George Conway urging, encouraging, and frankly insisting that I take my shot in 2016. I could never have been the campaign manager to the extent I was. He drove me to Trump Tower the day after and the 2 days after the Access Hollywood tape came out to make sure that I quit. I stayed on board. You have to do this. He came to that final debate and took the red eye home from Las Vegas. So the facts are the facts. And if you want to know the facts, these are the facts. We moved as a couple and as a family to Washington, D.C. I would never as a mother move my family, put my kids in whole new schools. So yes, George's opinion of Donald Trump mattered a lot to me when we were making decisions as a family. He changed his mind. He's entitled to do that. Who cares, by the way, that George is one of 80 million people who voted against Donald Trump? Right. Who cares? In other words, that's America.
You write a little bit about Canada, both our immigration system and, of course, the renegotiation of NAFTA. At one point, the president calls Justin Trudeau two-faced and took him to task for his defense spending.
Well, he's two-faced. I called him out on the fact that he's not paying 2%.
But I'm just wondering from your perspective, what was the nature of their relationship? Was it a good working relationship?
My belief is that Donald Trump as president was pushing for America first. And I think Justin Trudeau, as the leader of Canada, was pushing for Canada first. And I think they were both great jobs on behalf of their country and their people. I've met Mr. Trudeau many times. We've always had a very cordial relationship. But I think more importantly, I think your question is excellent in this way. I want the Canadian people to know that my own view and my own experience of their interactions and of the issues they worked on was that these agreements, including the USMCA, the new negotiated old NAFTA, I believe it benefited all three countries, Canada, the United States, and Mexico, which should make everybody happy. And it was forged not out of confrontation, but out of collaboration. Mm-hmm. And I think it's incredibly important that leaders of countries who don't agree on everything can work together.
You write about what Donald Trump tapped into, obviously, and how you became the campaign manager that fueled that movement and tapped into, obviously, many Americans relating to what he was saying. Do you see any other Republican candidate right now who could tap into that movement?
It's an excellent question. It's on the mind of many Americans as 2022, Rosemary, and then 2024, quickly after that, come into focus. Donald Trump's America First movement is branded by him, the Make America Great Again. I actually think America First is even a more apt way to talk about the policy accomplishments, because Make America Great Again was aspirational. It was a promise. He was going to do that, and he explained what that meant. He meant border security, he meant national security, meant bringing back the manufacturing base, recalibrating, and modernizing these trade deals, and it did, including with our great neighbors to the north and the south, Canada and Mexico. But Rosemary, I think what Donald Trump did, I've said many times, he didn't run a conventional political campaign. He started a movement. And people felt like they were a part of the movement, forgotten man, forgotten woman, forgotten child. And so I think he'll have to go first with his decision on whether or not to run for president.
Sorry to interrupt you. Would you want to be part of that rematch?
Well, we'll see if the president would like to have me. I believe that elections are about the future, not the past.
But just to be clear, you would do it if he asked you again.
Depends what the role was, and it depends what the campaign is about. I mean, I give Donald Trump enormous credit. I think he transformed American politics. He was willing to take a chance. He's a risk taker, but he's also a savvy businessman. He's a leader, and he had also had the number one TV show, et cetera. He knows when to fold and when to hold them, and he doesn't like to quit. He doesn't like to lose. He saw a winning strategy there, and it's he who won that election.
Thank you for making the time for Canada. Do appreciate it.
Thank you for having me, Rosemary. God bless the people of Canada.
Okay, well, a highly anticipated public inquest is underway into the death of a young man in Regina who is struggling with mental health issues. Coming up, we're going to hear from his family, grieving and looking for answers. A long-awaited public inquest into the death of a promising young football player has begun in Regina. Samuel Ugo, who struggled with mental health issues, was just 20 years old when he drowned in a lake 2 years ago after he was forcibly removed from Regina General Hospital. Now, speaking publicly for the first time, the family told Omaira Issa what they want to see happen.
A grieving father.
God bless you.
And a mother still reeling. My son didn't have any problem with anybody. What he could offer is just a smile, as you can see from his face. The 20-year-old from Abbotsford in BC died at Wascana Lake in Regina on May 21st, 2020. The promising football player was in the middle of a mental health crisis and sought help at the Regina General Hospital twice in one day.
Leave me alone. I said I know because I have mental issues.
Eventually, he was forcibly removed by security. A few hours later, he was found drowned in the lake. He died by suicide, according to his family. Speaking through a Sudanese Arabic translator, Samuel Ugo's parents say they're still looking for answers. I was not happy, the way that someone was treated who went to the hospital seeking treatment. But see, what happened to him being pulled away, that shouldn't happen to a person.
For this, I'm deeply sorry.
The Saskatchewan Health Authority apologized to Ugo's family. It admitted it had failed to provide care and paid $81,000 in damages to the family. A coroner's inquest is currently underway. From there, a jury will make recommendations to prevent similar deaths. This incident has made many in Saskatchewan's Black community lose faith in the healthcare system.
It's very unfortunate. If that night we had cultural sensitivity people around, or somebody looked like Samuel, maybe Samuel would have been alive today. You know what it means when I go to hospital, I see a black person, or I see a black doctor, or even a black janitor? I feel good. Then I feel safe.
We have to relieve that again.
Uko's uncle says his race affected the level of care the hospital provided.
They did not feel compassion to Samuel because of his color of skin. Nothing else will make us think otherwise.
In a statement, the SHA says it is committed to better support its diverse population.
Because you want to help.
The family says this week-long inquest is a first step in the long road to justice for Samuel Ugo. Omaira Issa, CBC News, Regina.
Well, surging gas prices are getting in the way of what should have been a tourism rebound.
So everything is more costly than ever.
Coming up, we'll check in with tour operators in Newfoundland feeling the pinch.
I'm Jamie Poisson, and tomorrow on CBC's daily news podcast, Front Burner, a deep dive into Quebec's controversial new language law, Bill 96. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.
Well, after a rough few years during the pandemic, there was hope that this year would mark a rebound for Canada's tourism industry. But in some parts of the country, the price of gas is really getting in the way of the bottom line. Chris O'Neill-Yates visited one Newfoundland town where businesses are struggling to keep up.
After a no-show last year, icebergs are beguiling visitors to Twillingate.
So we're from Australia, and this is almost as far away as you can get, and to see an iceberg, we're pretty lucky.
Not so lucky, though, with gas prices surging to over $2 a litre since they booked their travel.
Been trying to keep the tank full when it hits about half. So kind of lulled into a false sense of security that it's not costing that much.
This piece of ice and such as others represents 50% of the business.
Tour operator Barry Rogers now pays 3 times more to fill his boat's fuel tank.
Absolutely. I mean, we just can't put that, because of the world crisis back to our guests.
Rogers did increase ticket prices slightly, but to save fuel, he's reducing boat speed and cutting the number of trips.
I mean, if we've got, say, low numbers on the 4 o'clock, we ask our guests to move back to the 1.
And it's not just boat tour operators that are feeling the pinch this year. It's also having an impact on other people who rely on tourism to make a living.
So everything is more costly than ever.
Food costs have increased by at least 30% for Deborah Borden's restaurant. She's increased menu prices, but not by that much.
So you sometimes have to make decisions about what actually goes in that salad now. Maybe you have to take out some of the premium items so that you can keep price point to where it's at least acceptable.
She worries that people may balk at driving because of the high cost of gas.
They say Newfoundland is a very expensive destination. Yes, absolutely. But Twillingate, within Newfoundland, is also an even more expensive destination.
A delicate balance to keep business afloat until the next iceberg season. Chris O'Neill-Yates, CBC News, Twillingate, Newfoundland.
Well, tonight's moment is all about a one-of-a-kind, almost fairy tale-like reunion.
It's like a Cinderella and the slipper moment.
They are a perfect fit. We'll show you why. Well, that is Renee Forrestal. She's 60 years old and decided she wanted to pick up a hobby from her youth, roller skating. So naturally, she began her search for some used skates and came across what seemed like a pretty solid pair. She found them online, but it was only when she showed up to try them on that she realized just how perfect a fit they were. That moment is our moment.
Kind of meander through the Facebook and Marketplace and see if I could find any vintage roller skates. And they were sitting there with no laces and they had no size mentioned, and $40, that's a good deal. So I messaged him and I said, hey, I think these are gonna work. I looked at them and I thought, wow, they look like the same type I used to have. So I just put them on and it was like, holy smokes, I thought, wow. It's like a Cinderella and the slipper moment. It was like a perfect fit.
When she saw her name written on the insides, she just started tearing up. And I thought that was so cool. I feel like they could make a Disney movie out of the whole thing.
And I couldn't even believe it. I thought, how? And then I said, this is me. These were mine. Suddenly, I was reeled back to my youth, like 40 years ago. It was like, boom, like life flashed before my eyes. The universe works in mysterious ways. Let's put it that way.
Indeed it does. So, you know, of course, this is such a lovely, beautiful, wonderful story. But I can't help but think that like, if you were Renee, wouldn't that have been so like creepy in kind of a surreal sort of way? Like you go to buy something and you see your name and it's like those skates belonged to you all along. I don't know, maybe I'm overthinking things. I think it could make for a good horror movie. That's The National for this May 31st. Have a great night.